Wake TF up. Welcome to the Sovereign Signal, the channel of sovereign fire. Law and War. The Iron Fist Section 3. The Tale of War and Law. They tricked your grandparents with ceremony. They tricked your parents with procedure. They trick you with technology. But the deepest betrayal is not in the courtroom or the battlefield. It is in the dictionary itself. The words you were taught in school, the definitions you trusted, are not the words the law enforces. The law speaks another tongue. Latin phrases, terms of art, definitions buried in statutes. This is the slap in the face, the revelation that the very language you thought was yours has been weaponized against you. Just natural, the law of nature Oxford English, teaches that natural law is the moral order, the principles inherent in human existence. It sounds universal, eternal, beyond manipulation. You were told it meant rights that cannot be taken away. In law, just natural is acknowledged but sidelined. It is philosophy, not enforceable statute. Taxes, licenses, obligations, none of these fall under natural law. They are creations of lex, written law. The trap is clear. You thought natural law protected you from unjust burdens. The law says natural law is irrelevant when statute speaks. That is why taxation is not under just natural. That is why they convert you into a person, a mask, so obligations can be imposed. Jus rem, the law of things Oxford English, teaches that rights in rem are rights over property, tangible things you own. You thought ownership was simple. You hold it. It is yours. In law, jus rem divides ownership into layers. Dominium, absolute ownership, and usufruct, the right to use. You may possess, but title may belong elsewhere. The trap is that you think property means ownership. The law means property is fractured, conditional, revocable. Person, the mask Oxford English defines person as a human being, an individual man, woman, or child. You were taught it meant you. In law, person is persona, a mask, a role. Corporations, trusts, governments, artificial entities are all persons. The trap is devastating. When statutes say, no person shall, you think it means humans. In reality, it binds corporations and you, but it also grants corporations rights equal to yours. Adult, the legal fiction. Oxford English defines adult as a fully grown human being. You were taught it meant maturity, independence. In law, adult is a status, one who has reached the age of majority, capable of bearing obligations. The trap is that adulthood is not freedom. It is liability. As a child, you are shielded. As an adult, you are taxable, prosecutable, conscriptable. Individual, the isolated unit. Oxford English defines individual as a single human being, distinct from a group. You were taught it meant uniqueness. In law, individual is a category of person, stripped of collective rights, isolated for regulation. The trap is that individuality is not liberation. It is atomization. Consent, the silent yes Oxford English defines consent as voluntary agreement, a clear yes. You were taught it meant choice. In law, consent is consensus ad idem, agreement of the minds, but the threshold is low. Silence, presence, or use can equal consent. You consented by clicking, by entering, by failing to object. The trap is that your yes is no longer required. Notice, the ritual of information Oxford English defines notice as awareness, the act of observing or being informed. You were taught it meant knowledge. In law, notice is ritual. If they sent it, you are deemed informed, whether you read it or not. Ignorantia juris non excusat. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. The trap is brutal. You cannot plead ignorance. Justice, the split-tongue Oxford English defines justice as fairness, moral rightness. You were taught it meant balance. In law, justice splits. Jus is the ideal, lex is the statute. Courts enforce lex, not jus. Fiat justitia ruat caelum. Let justice be done though the heavens fall. Sounds noble. But in practice, it means statutes are enforced regardless of human cost. Tax, the engine of capture Oxford English, defines tax as a compulsory contribution to state revenue. You were taught it meant civic duty. In law, tax is not under just natural. It is not inherent, not moral, not universal. It is imposed through statute, enforced through courts, collected through coercion. The trap is that you thought tax was natural, inevitable. The law admits it is artificial, a creation of lex. That is why they convert you into personas, masks, so obligations can be imposed. Rights, the conditional promise. Oxford English defines rights as freedoms, entitlements inherent to you. You were taught they were absolute. In law, rights are conditional. Habeas corpus, you shall have the body, sounds protective, ensuring you cannot be held without cause. Yet in emergencies, habeas corpus is suspended. Rights vanish under war powers, under national security. The trap is that rights are not absolute. They are permissions, revocable when convenient. Law, the split between lex and jus Oxford English, defines law as rules of fairness, the system of justice. You were taught it meant order. In law, lex is statute, jus is justice. Lex binds you to written rules. Jus is the ideal. The trap is that lex is enforced, jus is ignored. You think law means justice. The law means statute. The generational slap. Your grandparents were lulled by Oxford English. Your parents were lulled by procedure. You are lulled by technology. Each generation trusted words. Each generation was betrayed. The iron fist does not need guns. It needs words. It does not need prisons. It needs definitions. It does not need fear. It needs trust. The battlefield is language itself. Just natural is sidelined. Just rem is fractured. Person is masked. Adult is liability. Individual is isolation. Consent is silence. Notice is ritual. Justice is statute. Tax is capture. Rights are conditional. Law is control. This is the slap in the face. The revelation that the dictionary you trusted was never the dictionary the law enforced. The betrayal is generational. The deceit is complete. The iron fist waits. Sign off. It is time to wake TF up. That is the mission of the sovereign signal, to strip away the velvet words, expose the iron fist, and restore clarity where deceit has ruled. Section 4. Maxims of higher law, lex injusta non est lex. An unjust law is no law at all. Meaning, originating with St. Augustine and later. Aquinas, this maxim declares that statutes contrary to justice are void. Case reference. In Somerset v. Stewart, 1772, UK. Lord Mansfield freed chained Somerset, ruling slavery, unsupported by English law. Though not citing Augustine directly, the principle was echoed. Unjust bondage could not stand as law. Trap exposed. You are taught, law is law. In truth, courts have admitted that injustice voids statutes, but governments bury this maxim under procedure. Lex divina superat legem humanum. Divine law stands above human law. Meaning, canon law and scholastic writings held that God's law outranks civil enactments. Case reference. Medieval ecclesiastical courts often invoked this to resist royal decrees that contradicted church doctrine. For example, disputes over marriage and sanctuary in the 13th century hinged on divine law supremacy. Trap exposed. You were taught statutes are supreme. In truth, divine law was once recognized as higher, but modern systems erased it to ensure taxation and obedience. Lex naturalize est immutabilis. Natural law is immutable, meaning natural rights cannot be altered by human legislation. Case reference. In Calvin's case, 1608 UK, the court recognized natural allegiance as binding, but also admitted natural law principles underpinned common law. Trap exposed. You were taught rights are gifts of government. In truth, natural law was once seen as untouchable, until statutes redefined rights as permissions. Fiat justitia ruat caelum. Let justice be done though the heavens fall. Meaning, justice must prevail, even if consequences are catastrophic. Case reference. Quoted in R.V. Dudley and Stevens, 1884, UK, where necessity was rejected as a defense for killing at sea. The court insisted justice must stand, even against human desperation. Trap exposed. You were taught justice means fairness. In truth, courts enforce statute, even when morality screams otherwise. Salus populi suprema lex esto. The welfare of the people shall be the supreme law, meaning, government must act for the people's welfare. Case reference. Invoked in constitutional debates, including U.S. Supreme Court opinions like Jacobson v. Massachusetts, 1905, upholding compulsory vaccination under public welfare. Trap exposed. You were taught this maxim protects you. In practice, it is used to justify state intrusion, taxation, and regulation for your welfare. Ignorantia juris non excusat. Ignorance of the law excuses no one. Meaning, you are bound by law whether you know it or not. Case reference. Applied universally in criminal and civil cases. For example, Lambert v. California, 1957, U.S., carved a rare exception, recognizing due process when a law was obscure. Trap exposed. You were taught notice means awareness. In truth, ignorance is no defense, binding you to thousands of statutes you never read. Actus Dei nemini facit injuriam. The act of God harms no one, meaning no liability for events beyond human control. Case reference. Used in contract and tort law, e.g., Nichols v. Marsland, 1876 UK, where floods excused liability. Trap exposed. You are taught responsibility is universal. In truth, law admits God's acts override liability, but only when convenient for institutions. Quod principi placuit legis habet vigorum. What pleases the prince has the force of law, meaning, Roman maxim asserting sovereign will as law. Case reference. Echoed in early absolutist rulings, later rejected in constitutional systems. Trap exposed. You are taught democracy rules. In truth, this maxim still lives in executive orders and emergency powers. The slap in the face. These maxims prove the truth. Law once admitted higher principles, divine law, natural law, justice above statute. Courts cited them, cases turned on them. But over centuries, governments buried them, replacing immutable rights with taxable obligations, replacing living men and women with persons and individuals. You are taught words mean one thing. In law, they mean another. You were taught rights are absolute. In law, they are conditional. You are taught tax is duty. In law, it is statute, not nature. Sign off. It is time to wake TF up. That is the mission of the sovereign signal, to strip away the velvet words, expose the iron fist, and restore clarity where deceit has ruled. Section 5. The financial mask and the trap of bills of exchange. They told you money was freedom. They told you banks were guardians. They told you signatures were promises. But the truth is venom. Your signature is power, your word is law. And the Bills of Exchange Act 1882 codified that power. Yet corporations, now including entire nations masquerading as corporate entities, rewrote the rules, fenced off the rights of living men and women, and turned the world into a corporate ledger. This is the trap. The law admits your signature creates obligation, but the system denies you the right to use it for liberation. The act itself, what it says. Section 3, 1. A bill of exchange is an unconditional order in writing, signed by the drawer, requiring the drawee to pay a sum certain in money. Section 4 distinguishes inland bills within the UK and foreign bills. Section 5. Capacity to incur liability on a bill is co-extensive with capacity to contract. Both natural persons and corporations can be parties. Section 23. Acceptance must be in writing, signed by the drawee. Without acceptance, the bill is worthless. Venom truth. The act admits that your signature creates a binding instrument. It admits that living men and women have capacity equal to corporations. It admits that commerce runs on signatures. Yet the trap is in acceptance. Corporations can refuse, governments can deny, and statutes override. The mask of person, Interpretation Act 1978, defines person as including corporations. Trap. You, a living man or woman, are treated as a person, the same category as corporations. This mask allows obligations to attach. It also allows corporations to claim rights equal to yours. Venom truth. The law admits you are sovereign under just natural. But statutes bind the mask, not the flesh. Corporations wrote themselves into the definition of person, then claimed the instruments of commerce for themselves. The trap of legal tender. Bank of England guidance. Bills of exchange are not legal tender. Only notes and coins issued by the Bank of England are. Trap. You can create a bill of exchange, but no one is compelled to accept it. Corporations can use them in trade. Governments can use them in finance, but you cannot force them to accept yours for taxes or bills. Venom truth. The law admits your signature is power. The system denies its use. They fenced off the instrument, reserved it for corporate commerce, and left you bound to statutory currency. Case law. Proof of the Trap UK County Court rulings, 2020s. Attempts to pay council tax or fines with self-created bills of exchange were struck out. Judges called them nonsense and misinterpretation. Bank of England FOI responses. Confirmed bills of exchange are not legal tender. Clifford Chance Briefing, 2015. Explained bills of exchange remain valid in trade, but not for statutory obligations. Venom truth. Courts enforce statutes, lex, not natural law, just natural. They admit bills of exchange are valid instruments, but only in commerce. They deny their use for sovereign discharge. The corporate nation. Countries like the UK are registered as corporate entities. Governments act as corporations, trading in bonds, securities, and bills. Citizens are treated as persons, masks under corporate law. Taxes are enforced as statutory obligations, not natural duties. Venom truth. Nations are corporations. Citizens are persons. Commerce is the battlefield. Your signature is power, but only corporations are allowed to wield it freely. The generational betrayal. Grandparents. Believed banks safeguarded savings. Believed signatures or promises of trust. Parents. Believed mortgages meant ownership. Believed contracts meant fairness. You. Believe digital banking means convenience. Believe apps empower. In truth, signatures are harvested, obligations automated, sovereignty erased. Venom truth. Each generation was tricked. Each generation was bound deeper. The Bills of Exchange Act codified your power, then fenced it off. The sovereign signature. A living man or woman's signature is a sovereign act. It creates obligation. It creates instruments. The Act admits this. Section 5 says capacity to contract is coextensive. You have the same capacity as corporations. The trap is in enforcement. Corporations can refuse, governments can deny, courts can strike out. Venom truth. The law admits your power. The system denies its use. This is the theft. Your sovereignty converted into corporate commerce. The slap in the face, you are taught, money is freedom. In law, money is corporate script. You were taught person equals human. In law, person equals mask, corporations included. You were taught signature equals promise. In law, signature equals instrument, but only if corporations accept. You were taught tax equals duty. In law, tax equals statute, not natural law. Venom truth. The trap is total. The law admits your sovereignty, then buries it under corporate statutes. Maxims of higher law. Forgotten truths? Lex injusta non est lex. An unjust law is no law at all. Lex divina superat legem humanum. Divine law stands above human law. Lex naturalis est immutabilis. Natural law is immutable. Venom truth. These maxims admit higher law. They admit statutes are subordinate, yet courts enforce lex, not jus. Corporations buried these truths, replaced them with statutes, and bound you under the mask. Why we must stand. If we do not stand, we remain corporatized forever. If we do not expose the trap, we remain bound to masks. If we do not reclaim the sovereign signature, we remain subjects of corporate nations. Venom truth. The law admits your power. The system denies its use. The corporations wrote the statutes, fenced off the instruments, and captured the people. Closing cut. The Bills of Exchange Act 1882 is proof of the trap. It admits your signature creates obligation. It admits you have capacity equal to corporations. It admits bills of exchange are valid instruments. Yet corporations fenced it off. Governments denied its use, and courts enforced statutes instead of natural law. This is the theft. Sovereignty converted into corporate commerce. Living men and women turned into persons. Nations turned into corporations. Freedom turned into obligation. The rigged game. They made the rules to a game you never knew you were playing. They wrote the language you were never taught. They set the board, moved the pieces, and told you it was law. But the longer you walk this path, the more you see the trap. Statutes are moves, corporations are players, and you, the living man or woman, were never told the game was monopoly. And now, as we expose each rule, each mask, each theft, you begin to understand. This journey is not comfort, it is awakening. And I assure you, the longer we take it together, the more certain it becomes. We will wake TF up. We will give you our sovereign signal, and the world will see the truth. The game was never justice, never freedom, never sovereignty. The game was monopoly, and the board is burning. This is the sovereign signal. Support the mission. Like, share, subscribe. Wake TF up.